Should the College Football Playoff Committee have left out the 13-0 Florida State Seminoles?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into another episode of Locked On Seminoles. Today is going to be an interesting one as the Noles have been left out of the College Football Playoff. We're going to break that down here in just a second. But first off, thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate it as we grow this podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcast for free and on YouTube, part of the awesome Locked On Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Let's jump right in. Number 1, Michigan. Number 2, Washington. Number 3, Texas. Number 4, Bama. Florida State fans were hoping to at least get the number 4 spot. Should they have? I'm going to give my opinion in a little bit, but here's what the College Football Playoff Committee, and I've got a screen over here, I've been watching it, had just stated. And it's what most people were afraid of. They made it very definitive that Jordan Travis being out is the primary concern for them on not putting the Noles into the playoff and giving Bama the nod at the number 4 spot. It's an interesting take, because he played the majority of the season, so you can take that however you want. But last night, Tate Rodemaker didn't even get a play, and the Noles won the ACC title game with their third-string quarterback. That's pretty difficult to do, and I think it deserves kudos. But that's my perspective. The College Football Playoff Committee, ultimately speaking, has the say and nobody else. They have, once again, put Michigan 1, number 2 is Washington, 3 is Texas, and 4 is Bama. Now, should they have done that? I'm going to allow people to make all the comments they want, good, bad, or indifferent. I will try to reply to as many of them as possible. And please let me know what your thing is for yes or no. Give me specific reasons why you think the Noles should have or should have not been in. Maybe you want to say something about the rankings in general, how they use criteria, whatever it may be. I'm happy to do it. But again, here's the key to everything. They just asked, and the committee has spoken. They said that because of Travis, that was the reason. Now, here's my take. I agree with it to a certain point, but there are other things to look at besides just Jordan Travis. Number 1, Florida State just put the hammering on a Louisville offense that had been rolling. They didn't even have 200 yards of offense. Run gap fits, pressuring the quarterback, being clutch like the sack that Fisk had at the end of the game. All the clutch plays that were needed, because let's be honest, Florida State's offense was sputtering last night for much of the game. They came up with those plays. Florida State's about as clutch a team as you can be. Even when they didn't have their best stuff in 2023, Jordan Travis being healthy. There were games he wasn't on quite as much, or somebody else was out. There was an injury to Johnny. There was an injury to an offensive lineman, whatever it was. Give credence to this Seminoles football team. They put their best foot forward over and over again, playing from behind at Clemson, playing from behind when they started off slow against Duke, finding a way to beat Miami when Miami, quite honestly, played a little bit better during most of that game than people expected, and Florida State had to make big plays. Keon comes up with a big play. There was a good catch on a couple of third downs that weren't always the star players. This is a team. And for that reason, I think they should have at least been considered for that number 4 spot. But at the end, Alabama gets it. Before I kind of just break this down any further, I do want to add one other thing. The committee was in a tough spot because no matter what they did, they were going to get a lot of criticism. Bama beat Georgia. Georgia had a 29-game winning streak. The last time they lost was to Bama in the SEC title game 2 years ago. So there's that to take into consideration. You also have to look at Georgia. A lot of people thought Georgia should have got in. And if you want to look at it from a Vegas perspective, I guarantee you, if you just want to talk about best teams now, Florida State would be 15-point underdog to Georgia or something like that. 10-point at least without Jordan Travis. 10-point, I think, at least. I'm not great at point spreads. I'm going to say Florida State 10 points minimum. Those are the kinds of things they could take into consideration. But at the end of the day, it's hard to overcome not having your quarterback. And I understand that. Do I wish things could have gone better for Florida State in that regard? Of course. And I feel bad for Tate Rodemaker too, not just Jordan Travis. He gets a concussion on the crappy hit that he got against the Gators. Good for him that he's okay, and he at least went through warm-ups last night. I would imagine he will be ready for the bowl game, whatever the case may be. As for Brock Glenn, he had his first start, but only had like 55 yards passing. He's obviously not ready for the big time yet. And Louisville's a very good defense. All of those things together, though, I perfectly understand the committee's point. How can you put them out there against Michigan, which just shut out Iowa in the Big Ten title game, because they're not the same team they were earlier this year? It's very difficult to overcome that. I don't know if you can do anything about this. If you're Florida State, you're going to be frustrated. But if you're rational, and fan is short for fanatic, and I'm sure a lot of you will be yelling at the screen because I'm not saying Florida State should be in. That's fine. I think a lot of people are still going to be mad, and it's just part of it. Sports and fairness aren't always the same. So college football playoffs, once again, the Final Four ends up being Michigan 1, Washington 2, Texas 3, Alabama 4. Florida State was technically 5th, Georgia 6th, in case you wanted to know, but it doesn't really matter. Florida State's going to end up in a New Year's 6, and I'm kind of curious to see how that goes, who they match up with, and which quarterback it's going to be. We're going to talk about that on Locked On Seminoles coming up here pretty soon. But once again, it's very unfortunate for the Noles. They don't make the playoff even after a magical 13-0 season, clinching the ACC title game over Louisville last night with a 16-6 victory, which it could be different, but sometimes it's not. So anyway, thank you very much. I'll have a lot more about the playoffs, who Florida State's going to play, recruiting, a lot of things coming up. We're only about 2.5 weeks away from the college football recruiting cycle ending in phase 1, at least, with the first national signing day. The second one is in early February. Florida State has a chance, in my opinion, to end up with the number 2 class behind Georgia. They're still tracking a few guys, and we'll talk about some of that over the next few weeks right here at Locked On Seminoles. But until then, thank you very much and have a great day.